film sucks. Indie film sucks. It's the Indie Film Sucks podcast. Yeah.
Coming at you from the mean streets of St. Louis, from a basement on South Broadway, the Indie Film Sucks podcast. Because indie film is, it's not a waste of time, it's a waste of your life. No. So, tonight we have Mr. Wade Patterson, writer, director, head cook and bottle washer. I'm not sure what all he does, but what I've seen what he does pretty well. So, hey, Wade, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
That makes two of us.
That's
So,
great.
if you're new to the Indie Film Sucks podcast, this is the podcast where we talk about the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens of true independent filmmaking. And that means we do reviews, we do interviews, we do all sorts of fun stuff like that. And you can find us on indiefilmsucks.com, IndieFilmSucks on Facebook, IndieFilmSucks on Instagram, and probably some other places that no one goes, like Twitter or X or whatever that's called anymore. And apparently some of this stuff goes to LinkedIn, and who the hell uses LinkedIn for indie film? I have no idea. Seems like a terrible mixture to me, but what do I know? Anyways, Wade, my question for you is a question I ask a lot of people, which is, what is your suck?
I think it's a basic answer, but I think it just comes down to money. Just where do you find the money to keep these projects going? It's always a struggle, and you have to get out there and beg and borrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear you can find a dentist or two that might give you some money sometimes, but that is constantly the question I'm thinking about when I write something. I'm like, okay, how much is this going to cost? And then sometimes you're like, well, I might have to trim this back because it's going to cost too much money. So that's the thing for me. I think that always kind of makes it challenging, but it also kind of makes it fun too, because then you have to get a little creative to find a solution. You don't have money.
Yeah, I don't know if it makes it fun.
Fair
I,
enough.
I mean, people say that, but man, I get the challenging part, I get the creative part, but man, the fun part. Nah, I don't know. I get what you're saying. I have never had any luck with finding dentists, but I've got a few doctors to throw
Oh, good.
some coins our way, so that helps. So
Well, and I think the other thing is like I think there's a level of money where it's like it's not like there's a level of money where you'll feel comfortable enough that you can kind of focus on actually direct writing and directing. Whereas right now the level I'm at, it's like you're thinking about everything. So I just want to get to that level where it's still maybe you don't have quite enough money, but at least it's enough to hand off a few jobs to other people maybe.
yeah, I'm not sure what level that is because I have found I've had some bigger budget projects and some tiny budget projects. And let's be real, even the bigger budget indie films I've done are still small, nothing, absolutely nothing compared to Hollywood.
Mm,
And a little bit more money, man, it only helps a little bit more, really.
sure, yeah.
It's not like the be all end all answer that I thought it would be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Money doesn't solve all our problems.
No, no. Sometimes it creates more. But
Mm,
regardless of all of that, tonight I want to talk to you about Death Cipher. Tell us
yeah.
about that. That's a feature film.
Yeah, I mean, Death Cipher been the last 2 years of my life, really. It was just a labor of love. It was something, I kind of where it all kind of started for me was I had attempted multiple times to make a feature film over several years, and money was the problem a couple times, and then COVID kind of killed another project, and so I just woke up one day and I kind of looked in the mirror and I saw a man who had not made a feature film yet, and that just really bothered me, and so I said, okay, what can I do to make a film that I can actually know that I can get done no matter what happens. Whether there's a worldwide pandemic again or whether there's, I don't have enough money or whatever. What can I do to make sure like, okay, I'm gonna get this done, come hell or high water. And I'd been toying with an idea of kind of a contained thriller that was a little bit different than what Death Cipher ended up being. Um, it was sort of about an online internet personality. And then an idea occurred to me of kind of utilizing the internet as sort of a labyrinth, so to speak, for someone to sort of navigate from the comfort of their own home. And so out of that was sort of born the genesis of Death Cipher. And so the log line for the movie is really about a disgraced journalist who discovers an online puzzle that causes people to disappear. And so that's sort of really the jumping off point. And she sort of discovers these mysterious websites and videos online that kind of become the sort of maze she has to navigate to figure out what's going on. So
Yeah, that sounds about right. You really hit all those notes, and you said something that, man, that's the funny thing about filmmaking and certainly indie filmmaking. You said this has consumed the last 2 years of your life, right?
yeah,
And you shot it in 12 days.
yes.
So it took 12 days to shoot and 700 something days to get to where it's at now.
Yeah, it is, and it's in the distribution process is a lot of it's waiting, but you're sending out emails and you're trying to get it out there, and so I shot for 12 days, but then spent almost a year in the edit, and some of that was just trying to get feedback and waiting on other people, because at this budget level, when you start getting other people involved they kind of have to do it on their own schedule because they have other
Mm-hmm.
things that come up. And so, the timeline tends to expand, when you're in that scenario. And so kind of waiting on a few other people to get the score and the sound design done. And then the distribution part was also was a lot of a waiting game for sure.
So what have you done as far as distribution goes?
So I actually went through Film Hub. I reached out to a bunch of different people actually. I kind of did some cold emails and then submitted to I can't remember the name of them right now, but they actually have they're kind of similar to Film Hub in that they do kind of lower budget distribution, but they actually have a way you can submit on their website and then they just say yes or no. Uh, and so I tried to find some sort of lower level distributor, and then after a few rejections, I kind of was like, all right, well, let's just do Film Hub because I'd heard a lot about that, and so I went through the QC process with them, quality control process, which took about a month, and then again, that was once I got on Film Hub. But basically, the way it works is you create a listing, you upload your poster, your movie, you put your log line. You can also upload like a pitch deck and stuff. And then it's just kind of up to all these different channels to sort of discover your project and then decide if they want to pick it up. And so I got accepted by Film Hub and then kind of was waiting, and then Tubi picked us up, um, within about 2 months. And that was kind of the big kickoff for us. Once we got on Tubi, it was like, oh, now we're out there and now people can see it, and that kind of opened up a lot for us once that happened. So.
So by open up, how do you mean? Is it getting a lot of views?
We've just being able to get some views. I mean, I think we've gotten a decent amount of views. It's kind of hard because Tubi doesn't share a lot of metrics, but I am seeing some activity on the IMDb. I'm seeing, I someone mentioned Letterboxd, and so I was like, oh, I'll just go see, maybe I'll go set it up myself on Letterboxd. And when I looked up, it was already listed and had 3 reviews on Letterboxd. So people are discovering it and reacting to it. And the reviews have been, pretty positive considering the budget I'm at and all that. So I've been really happy with the response. And right now I'm starting, I've been able to get on a few podcasts, and even this, being here with you to chat about it has been kind of the fun part of just being able to just talk about the experience and be like, hey, we did it. We did a thing.
So do you mind talking about the budget at all? Or are you keeping that
Yeah,
under wraps?
absolutely. I made it for $4,000. And, a lot of that was food and props, because we wanted to make sure everyone was really well fed. And, there's a lot of little prop things in the film if you watch it. There's all these videos and these websites, and we had to build, make stuff or buy stuff. And so, that was, I would say, probably 40 to 50% of our budget just went to food and like art department stuff. And then we had some other random expenses, and it just kind of over time, we got around 4,000, maybe even a little bit under, but I'm just kind of rounding up and saying four because that's a nice
Sure.
round number. But, part of the reason I was able to do that is because we shot at my apartment. And so having to be able to control that variable and be like, okay, I know like we just wake up in the morning, the gear was already, in the guest bedroom. I just pull it
Yeah.
out, set it up. Sometimes I'd set up the night before, and that actually saved us a lot of time and money, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can shoot in one location and if you completely control that location, there is nothing better in the world than that as far as indie film goes.
Yeah. And I was actually a little bit nervous about making a single location film. I'd been hesitant to do that, and a lot of the projects I'd worked on were multiple locations. One project I was in development on, or we were the one that got shut down during COVID, we had like a ton of locations. We had like 27 days in the script, so that was like 27 different costumes. It was like really complex, and I don't know why I ever thought I was going to be able to accomplish that, but that like simplifying actually did once I found a concept that made sense to me and I could kind of like get excited about, that's when I think doing a single location film made sense. I think if the concept wasn't as exciting, I probably wouldn't have been able to muster the gumption to do it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So what we went through recently, our last film was right around 100K,
Mm,
and our follow-up film we were working on was about 150.
okay.
And I'm here to tell you, man, that it is really hard to make any money back at that level. It's like
Mm-hmm.
really hard because you think, oh man, I can make the best film in the world for $100,000 and it can have all these bells and whistles, and that's all true to an extent. But once you put it out there, the audience at large doesn't give a shit. They don't
Right.
care, and they're gonna watch the first 5 minutes and say, "Oh, this is crap. This sucks," and or hopefully they'll love it. But either way, what we decided for our current film we're in production on is instead of making this bigger budget film that it's very difficult to make that money back. Let's scale it way back and make it as cheap as humanly possible, which is what we're doing right now. And I gotta say, that is the smartest thing you can possibly do, in my opinion. So making a movie, a feature film, a very competent feature film for $4,000, I mean that was the move right there because it's easy to spend like 40,000 and
Yeah.
and like, oh, we have a C-list name in it. Okay, great, but nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. So
Right.
you're gonna if you're gonna get the same result for 4,000 versus 40 or 50,000, go for the 4,000.
Mm. Yeah, I mean and I think that's another thing that it's a great point, and I think that was some of the thinking behind it as well, as like I can just get this done, and I think you have to change some of your expectations too, because when you make a $4,000 feature, you're not going to have a $30 million marketing budget, or even
No,
sometimes a $30,000 marketing budget. So then you have to kind of get creative in how you get the film out there. I mean, and like you're talking about with the money you're talking about, $100,000 isn't a lot for a
no,
feature film. It isn't, but it's a
no.
lot for like if at this level, right? And
Yeah.
and and there is seems to be this threshold where it's really hard to make any amount of money back at any level of indie film. It seems because it's so easy to get content, and
Hmm.
people just kind of happen upon it. And so like I think a lot of like the individual movie, whatever someone makes, isn't actually worth that much, in terms of like value.
No.
And it's just getting it out there and getting people to see it. and getting eyeballs on it is what's valuable. So then when someone sees that your project is suddenly viral or whatever, then it's valuable, right? Then
Hmm.
people will maybe put some money into it. But that only can only, sometimes only happens after the fact and you've already made it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think my thinking kind of behind what I was doing, I heard someone make this point when I was in the process of making Death Cipher, and it sort of made me feel better about where I was in the budget. Was that like you're not making this film for like a million people audience. You're making this film for your investors, your next investors for your next film. Um, and so being able to say like I did a feature film and completed it at, like, for $4,000. Hey, give me 40,000 or something, or give me some more money, or maybe leverage it into like getting, a bigger star in your film or something like that once they see that you've done something. But I've noticed that if someone hasn't made a feature film, I have when I was the guy who hadn't made a feature film, it was just hard to get anyone to like even look at one of my scripts. You know what I mean? And so even getting consideration is really hard when you haven't done it before. So at least now I can say, okay, I've made a feature film. Here's my next script. Would you give me, I don't know, $10,000 to do it? Something like that.
Yeah, I know this is a terrible, terrible, shitty thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyways. I don't feel like you are a true a true filmmaker until you've made a feature.
Mm,
I mean, and there are people who make amazing shorts. There are people who have made amazing shorts that have gotten millions of views, way more than all of my crap combined. But I feel like the real test is, have you made a feature? And and the thing is, once you cross that threshold, nobody can ever take that away from you.
hmm
I don't know how
Yeah.
you feel about that, but
Well, I will say this that I've done maybe a dozen short films. I did like two web series, and I think I did like a short documentary series as well, like just that I just produced myself. And making a feature was much different. It was always kind of the white whale, because all that time, every time I made a short film, it was sort of like I'm trying to gather the skills so that I can then make the feature film. That was always the goal, right? And then, but it took almost 10 years to get to this point. And so it was just it's very hard. And so I do think you do learn something in this process of making a feature film, especially if you do it at this level where you have to kind of will everything into
mhm.
existence, and it's such a challenge. So I do agree with that sentiment that there is something that maybe you gain by doing a feature film that you can't really learn in other places.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. And one thing you gain is an enormous amount of debt a lot of times.
Yeah.
But
Well,
but I oh, go on.
they say you're not supposed to spend your own money when you make a film, but it's like I think that's what everyone you kind of what you have to do because who's going to give you the money to make to do this thing that sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a bunch of people together and we're gonna pretend in front of a camera. Give me $1 million for that.
I mean, people do it, people manage it somehow or another. But I will say this, and my thought process has shifted immensely over the years of doing this stuff. As hard as it is making a movie, and it's very difficult. It is very difficult to make even a short film, but definitely an independent feature film is one of the most difficult things you can do. That is simplicity and ease itself compared to selling and marketing the thing.
Yeah.
That is the real difficulty.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think a lot of filmmakers are prepared for that part of it because,
No,
we're artists. We're not business people a lot of the times. And
no.
and sometimes I meet someone who is more business minded, but then they make a really crappy feature film that people don't want to watch, because it almost seems like compartmentalized. If you have the artistic, you don't have the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's been a challenge, and I think one of the hardest things is me trying to learn like what does marketing look like, especially in 2026 because it's so different, than it was. And I see some people who are like, well, a lot of what I do is on Facebook, and in my experience, it's been harder to get any traction from Facebook, at least for this film, right? Because it's, I'm trying, you're trying to find your audience for a film.
Hmm.
And if I had the energy, I think I would have been doing a lot more like during the production of the film and during post production. But I just didn't have the energy. Like everything was just kind of focused on getting it done.
Hmm.
And where I did, for my next film, I'm definitely going to try to think about the marketing stuff, from the outset. Like what kind of materials can we be creating? Because now that I've done the feature film, I feel like I can now maybe create a plan moving forward of like, okay, here's what we need to do to make sure we have everything we need to market it. Whereas on the first film, I think I was just like, I just need to get this done, come hell or high water, and we everything will sort itself out on the back end. Um,
And I think that's where a lot of filmmakers fall. I know that's where I fell. It's like I'll just make it, and then the rest of the stuff will just happen. And man, it never just happens. It that's it's very depressing when you get to post production, as I call it, because the outlets that we have. I mean, on one hand, we have more ways to get our film out there than ever before.
mhm.
But on the other hand, there's so many other people doing the exact same thing that you are lost in this sea of independent films. And it is so difficult to rise above that.
Mm.
And I don't know of any good answer for that. I mean, that's one of the reasons we started the whole podcast and review site is because there are not really enough places to get your film out there. And I found with our last film, I was sending it to all these different review sites, and either they never got back or they wanted like 75 bucks.
Mm.
And it's like, yeah, you can move to the front of the line if you pay 75 bucks and maybe it'll get reviewed in 6 weeks. But
Mm.
there was just such a, I guess, lack of interest because there's so much.
Right.
And man, that is the hardest pill to swallow because every filmmaker thinks, "Oh, I've got this rare and unique property and everyone's going to love it as much as I do." And you get out there and it's like, "Man, nobody gives a shit." I'm so bummed out.
Well, and I think the mistake that we make, I think, as artists, is we think like, oh, we made something, therefore people will care,
Yeah.
you know, and they just don't. And that sucks. I mean, that definitely
Yeah.
sucks. But it's also a challenge to be like, okay, how do I get them to pay attention? Um, and I think one of the ways you do that is by making a film worth watching.
Yes.
You make something worth watching, then you have to think about, okay, well, how do I tell people it's worth watching through the marketing? You have to think about that as well, and create something. We had kind of planned this really big sort of campaign similar to something like they did with Long Legs. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Long Legs or saw what they did with their marketing, but
Hmm.
they created like these fake websites, and it was and you could call a number, and like we were like, okay, we're gonna do something like that. We had this whole plan, with our marketing, but when it came time to actually like get the film out there, I realized like, A, this is gonna take a lot of effort,
Hmm.
and B, like, because of the size of my film, like I just need to get people, once it got on Tubi especially, like I just want people to click on the link and watch it. And so asking them to go through this like puzzle and go to all these websites and maybe never arrive at the link, I kind of realized like, oh, like, well, I just need to get them to click. And so we kind of had to change our whole marketing plan, especially like for our budget, for the level we're at. Like, okay, we need to just get people directly to the movie as quickly as
Hmm.
possible. Because that's the only way they're probably going to watch it. Because if they have to go through this maze of because we were trying to create something like what was in the film, and
Hmm.
make it kind of fun. But we would need millions of people to participate in order for it to actually like work.
Yep.
And so even something like that, we had to realize like, oh, like we need to we have to think about what is the best thing for this film at the level it is, where it can be, where it's distributed, all that kind of stuff. Like, how do we get people to go straight to that? So
Yeah, I mean, you touched on some real important points. The baseline for all of this is just make a good movie.
Mm,
which is easier said than done.
yeah.
But, I think you made a good movie. So, you hit the baseline. So congratulations there.
Thank you.
Because trust me, man, I have seen some really bad movies, and my goal is never to shit on someone's dreams or shit on someone's films. I'm gonna, we're gonna give them an honest review, right? Because it's really easy to pick apart indie films and say, well,
Mm,
you didn't do this, well, you did do that, well, blah blah blah. But uh, it's the baseline is just make a good movie. So if
mm.
if you start with that, it makes everything else a little bit easier. And that's it's you're right, man. It's so much. You get to the point where you got to push the thing, and you don't have $1 million or even $10,000, so it's just sweat equity, and that's exhausting. It is very hard to do, if especially if you have other things going on in your life like family and work and whatever else, but you have to push your film, as if your life depends on it. That's a difficult proposition.
Well, and I think that's making a good movie. I think starts with having a good script,
Hmm.
and that and in the way with like indie film is like you need people to participate. Like even though I made my film in my apartment and I was shooting it and I directed it, I still needed actors. I still needed a couple producers to kind of help with some logistical stuff, right? And the only way to get people to like contribute to a 4K film is to have a script that like make they'd be like, oh, that's a good script. I mean, I want to
Hmm.
work on this. Like, I'm excited to work on this because I work in LA in the film industry, and I can't tell you how many projects I work on where it's like this script is, I actually started doing independent narrative film when I first moved to LA, and it was low rates. We're working on the script. Like sometimes the script doesn't even make sense, and you're
Hmm.
and you're putting all this effort into it. They've got a big crew. We're all making it, and we're always going into overtime, which is unpaid. On a lot of the stuff I was working on, and we kind of grit our teeth and bore it. But this I can think of maybe two scripts the whole time I've been in LA where I was like, oh, this is a good project I'm working on. You know what I mean? So it's
So
it's yeah, so it's just one of those things. It's like it's rare to find a good thing, and so I think people get
sure.
excited and want to jump on it.
So those two scripts that were good, what happened to those in the long run?
One of them I don't think ever got released, and then the other one, it was a short film. It was a good script, but I think when we actually got to shooting it, I think there was I think they miscast a couple characters, and so
Mm.
then it actually kind of hurt the product at the end product, and I don't think it ended up being a good film, if that makes sense. So it
Yeah,
it it, it
yeah.
kind of it kind of sucked because it was like I was like, oh, this is a really good script, and then when we were on set, it was just kind of obvious that like the choices that were made in casting kind of hurt, like ruined the script, that next part of the process, anyways. So
I mean, yeah, that's an important piece of the puzzle, obviously. People make millions upon millions of dollars as actors because that's a very important part. If your characters aren't believable, then your story's not believable, and what's the point of doing it? So I thought you did a good job with casting. Tell me about that process.
yeah, so I used Actors Access. On the side, I mean, it was called Breakdown Express on the producer's side, but it's just a website, and a lot of actors in LA are on it. They have a profile, and you can just post a casting call, and then people just submit. And I was very honest up front. I was like, hey, this is unpaid. This is what the project is. Here, I tried to be as like straightforward as possible, and I still got like 600 submissions um, in the casting process for all of the roles. There's a
Yeah.
lot of roles in the film, so altogether, six. I mean, maybe 600 to 800. So it was a lot of people to kind of, and then people submit. We send out sides, and people submit their audition, and I think we had for the lead, I think we had 123 auditions. Like we
Wow.
did eco casting, so it's all kind of right there on the website, and so you just watch the videos, And then for the first time ever for the callbacks, I did them on Zoom. And I usually have done callbacks in person, but just in after COVID, it just kind of became sort of standard to do everything on Zoom. And that was just kind of the easiest thing for the budget level we were at. So, renting a space and all that kind of stuff was going to be
Hmm.
too expensive. So we had eight ladies come in for the callback on Zoom, and Ashley just kind of she just when we saw her, it was like, this is Nora. So that was. But another interesting thing that happened in the casting process, because the script was, I was writing the script, I wrote the script and had a draft, but then I was also kind of tinkering with it through the whole process. Because what I actually did was I said, no matter what, by the end of 2023, I'm shooting this feature film. And so I was just like, I'm gonna keep working on the script and casting at the same time, but I'm gonna shoot it. And so what was nice about that, because things are a little flexible, one of the girls who auditioned for Nora, the lead role, she just kind of blew me away with her audition, but it wasn't right for Nora. And there
Hmm.
was another role in the script that I was like, wow, she has this like vulnerability that really, really resonates. And so this part in the script, I think she'd be good for it, but I need to expand it. And so that was the role of Emma. So the role of Emma was actually much smaller in the original script. And then her casting, her audition just kind of blew me away. I was like, oh, I kind of want to expand this and make this like the one of the main characters in the film. And if you watch Death Cipher now, it almost probably doesn't make sense not to have Emma be the person that Nora's sort of like following through this
Sure.
maze. But at the time, that kind of wasn't the setup, and so it was kind of cool. Something that kind of kept happening on Death Cipher was, we were kind of leaving. I was kind of trying to hold everything loosely because it was such a fast and loose thing, and then we'd kind of make these discoveries and be like, okay, let's kind of follow this a little bit. Okay, we have this great actress. Let's build a part around her, instead of trying to like force people into roles.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing because I've had similar things where I've cast someone for something and they just brought this really awesome energy. So I'm like, wow, I need to expand this role because this person is so good. And that's a great thing when that happens. Especially on, low budget indie stuff. It's not like you're bringing in, De Niro, it's the nobody, but they they do such a great job that you want to help them by giving them more, and you want to help your film by putting them in it more. So that's a pretty cool thing to do and to experience.
Well, the indie film, I mean, the budgets we're working with, it's like you have to be flexible. Like
Hmm.
it's the only way to kind of make sure you can get over the finish line, because there are things that if I had the proper budget and all this kind of stuff, maybe I would do it a different way. But I think in this process of sort of making Death Cipher, I kind of discovered that like it's kind of nice to have a little flexibility, even on the day of shooting, where things are supposed to be set. And I wonder sometimes with these bigger budget films where they have to have the script completed before they even go into production, which makes sense. But for some of these films, they get into production and it's like, well, if something's not working, like, do you even like if you're in a big budget with a lot of CGI, like one of the Marvel films, like, do you have the flexibility to like fix this issue? Because you might like there was a couple times we were like, oh, this scene doesn't work for some reason, and we need to kind of like rethink it. So I'd kind of work with the actors on set and say, okay, how do we need to change this? And sometimes it was minor changes. It wasn't like world shattering, shifts,
Sure.
but it was enough that like I realized, okay, there's this beat isn't working in the script. So I work with the actors, we figure it out, and then we try it. And the film always got better when we did that. But looking at some of these bigger budget films, it's like, there's almost not enough flexibility because they have such big budgets, they have such tight schedules, they have 150 people working on it, and if you make one change, you've got to let 25 department heads know, and then they've got to let all their people know. And it like I actually worry sometimes at those budget levels, how do you actually turn the ship if you realize in the middle of production that there's an issue?
Well, I mean, some films don't. I mean, the what I'm thinking off the top of my head is Solo, the Han
Mm,
Solo movie, which they replaced the director, you know,
right. Yeah.
halfway in with Ron Howard, and I mean, it pretty much tanked at the box office, and
Hmm.
it's universally panned. I think it's an okay film for what it is, but yeah, I mean, the bigger the budget, the higher the stakes. I mean, on a $4,000 film, I mean, yeah, that's $4,000 that you're responsible for. And for me or you or most people, 4 grand is a lot of money. I just had to spend $4,000 on a dog. So, I know saving a dog's life, that's a lot of damn money. But that's not the same as $200 million. And I mean, there are studios that were bankrupted by films that went awry, like Heaven's Gate. I don't remember the name of the studio that it bankrupted, but there are. I was just looking at a list today of films that bankrupted studios.
Mm.
So yeah, the more money you have, you do have a degree of freedom, but you're also locked into certain things that you can't just pivot on a dime like you can with an indie film.
Yeah, and I think that's the an advantage that like every filmmaker on the indie level should embrace. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I almost can't imagine like making a film without that flexibility now. And you hear like I'll see like interviews or I'll listen to like European directors kind of talk about their process, and they tend to have a little more like flexibility. Sometimes that doesn't result in the most compelling stories, because they sometimes are too flexible.
Yeah.
But if you can find that balance, I think you can create something that like feels alive, because when you write something, when I write a script, I'm thinking of all these things, and I sometimes I don't even know what the actors look like, right? Because I haven't cast them yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then you cast the person, and they bring something different to the role, kind of like we were talking about earlier, where you kind of have to be willing to like follow that. And I think something I've been learning as a filmmaker is to like trust the other people more. Because on the indie side,
Mm-hmm.
like it's kind of all you, right? So like you get to this thing where you want to control every variable, but like when an actor has an instinct, like trust that. Like at least experiment, let them try it, for at least one or two takes,
Mm-hmm.
and then if someone on set has an idea, the PA may say the best idea for on set, and you let them have that. Of course, you have to fire them because they shouldn't be talking, but after that, you take the idea and you roll with it, right? So,
Well, yeah, I always say you cannot make an indie film by committee. It
mhm.
doesn't work. You have to have one voice, one director, one direction. However, that one voice, that one vision, that one direction has got to be able to take input from other people. Otherwise, it ultimately probably won't work.
Right.
I mean, look at George Lucas. You know, when he got so big that he didn't have to listen to anybody, I think his movies got a lot worse.
Hmm.
Now, of course, he's a billionaire, so what do I know? But it's like when you were at a level that you had to take input from other people, that made what he was doing better.
Hmm.
So I think the way that I always operate is all right. So we got a plan. We're going to do the plan first, and after we know we have that done and we're covered, let's stir open the floor and see what other people come up with. And a lot of times, what other people come up with, oh, that's better than the plan. Who thought up this plan? That sucks. That was better. So
Yeah. Well, I have a little bit of a hot take, but I think, talking about bigger directors, I think it would be really interesting to see someone like Steven Spielberg make a film for like $300,000. Because I think he could just I think he would actually come alive in that. And right now he's working with such big budgets that I don't know how if you've seen one of his films recently, but I haven't enjoyed them as much as like some of his earlier work. And I feel like, you have these bigger directors who get to a point where no one says no to them. And when you
yeah.
don't have that some kind of limitation or some kind of pushback, because sometimes as an artist you just have a crazy idea, right?
Hmm.
And you kind of need someone to say, "Hey, that's not going to work," or maybe you should try just something different, right? And people are happy to tell me that all the time, right? Because they love
Sure.
them. They're like, "Wait, that's a stupid idea," and I'm like, "You know what? You're right. I'll do that." But nobody's really telling these bigger directors that, and so you have some of these films where you're like, "Man, I feel like this could have been great, but it's like it's too self-indulgent." Or
Hmm.
there's just it's too much, So that's something that that's my hot take is I want to see Steven Spielberg do a low budget indie film.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, no way.
But I cannot think of the last Spielberg film that I have seen, to be honest.
Mm,
I mean, I know I have to have seen something since Jurassic Park, but I can't think of his later films that I have watched, because you're right, they don't hit the same as all of his earlier work,
hmm. There's like
you
a
know.
magic that's kind of missing now, you know?
Yeah, but whatever. I At this point I'd take that trade off
Yeah, yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
because nobody's watching my low budget crap and saying, "Oh, look at this magic." No,
Yeah.
no, I'd take the 100 million bucks and be happy with it. But another thing you got me thinking about is with your casting process. Normally, filmmakers at all budget levels work with the same people over and over again, and it sounds like with this film, this was all new people for you.
Yeah, I think everyone that I worked with was new. You know, I had some people I was kind of trying to work with, and then COVID, a lot of people I knew, both on the crew side and on the actor side, just left LA.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had to start over with some of my network and with just, who I knew. And so and I also think when I started writing this, there was a couple people that I thought I might work with, that just for different reasons it didn't work out, but that just allowed me to cast other people. And I think everyone that ended up in the film, especially all the on-screen roles, just really nailed it. And I'm really, I've been pleasantly surprised because I had nothing to offer. I was like, hey, this is the film. Come hang out on set. We're gonna try to have some fun. And I think because people want to just make stuff, especially as
Hmm.
actors, like I mean, as an actor, you just want to go be an actor, right? And
Hmm.
so I was trying to offer that opportunity and not, I don't try to be, I'm not yelling at people. I'm not trying to like do 16-hour days. I'm trying to make it a fun experience so that when everyone leaves, they want to come back the next day. Because hey,
Hmm.
when you're working for free, you can just wake up and be like, I'm not coming back up tomorrow because I'm not getting
Yeah.
paid, right? So I try to give them incentive to show up again.
But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I've done free projects plenty. I've plenty of people work for me for little or nothing, and you find the right people who get it, who understand it, because yeah, uh, you can when there's nothing wrong with paying people either, obviously, but some people bring that kind of mercenary attitude, which they're just going to be there, they're going to put in their time, and they're going to bail, and they're not going to stay and do anything a minute longer, and
Hmm.
that that doesn't really help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'm always looking for partners in
Yeah.
this, and partnership, especially with my lead actress, Ashley, like she was so game at every part of the process. And if we, there were a few times we had to do a lot of takes for certain because I was trying to do, because we were in this contained space. I tried to do at different points some complicated camera moves with dollies and stuff like that because we're in this space for so long. I was trying to make it visually. I was trying to keep kind of moving the camera if we weren't moving in the space. And so that required, sometimes doing more takes than we might have done if we were just on sticks or tripod, right?
Sure.
So, but Ashley was game. She was willing. She'd do it. And if I was like, "Hey, let's do another one," she's like, "All right, let's do it." I mean, she never complained. She never, ever seemed like she was upset at any point in the process. And that was just really helpful for me because I'm doing so much that, having someone that I could just trust to like be there for every moment and to commit to every take, just made it so much easier to just do such a big project in 12 days, right? So it was nice to have, and every actor that showed up was so game. Even when they had a smaller part, they'd just show up and just really commit to it. And some of that was just when I was casting, I wanted to make sure, like with Ashley, we made sure we met up and had coffee before I offered her the role. And that's I had some advice about that. Just make sure you can get along and make sure it's
Hmm.
pleasant,
Yep.
because you're going to be working on set together, and so you need to know not just that this person can act well, but also that they can interact well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very important. That's probably the most important thing with the cast, with the crew. If you ever get that feeling in your gut that there's something off here, always listen to your gut. And it doesn't matter what they bring to the table. If they don't bring a good attitude, it ain't worth it.
Yeah.
So you got to have that.
I heard a story about Gene Hackman that he would purposely throw tantrums and make everyone uncomfortable on set because he needed that energy to get into the scene. And I've heard stories about that of actors from that generation, kind of being brats or tyrants or making it hard on set. Someone like Klaus Kinski, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was famous for just being a maniac and yelling at everyone all the time. And it's just like in this day and age, like no one wants to deal with that. I
No.
think of a certain time, maybe that was okay, but like now, there's so many people that want to be actors. Like I'd rather work with someone less experienced who is passionate and get kind of game for anything than someone that I'm gonna have to tiptoe around and try to like, hey, would you mind just staying an extra 30 minutes so we can get this last shot? It's just it's not fun.
No, no, not at all. And I think Kinski and Herzog like tried to kill each other multiple times. So yeah, you don't need that, man. It's hard enough to do this shit. You don't need that level of stress.
Yeah. It
So
makes
what?
for good stories, but
Yeah,
it's not fun to
no,
to
it's
actually
not.
experience it.
No, it's not at all. What size crew did you have on this?
So every every shoot day I had at least one other person with me, but max probably four people on the crew. Most days it was me and a producer.
Hmm.
When on probably three or four of the days I had an extra person or maybe two. But because we were shooting in my apartment and there wasn't a lot of space, I really was like, I can't have 12 people in here on the
Yeah.
crew. We'll spend more time moving people around out of the way than we will actually
Hmm.
filming. So
All right, Wade. So what do you have coming up next? What's the next project?
yeah, I'm working on the script right now. I'm trying to do something a little more, uh, you know, Death Cipher was kind of more mystery thriller, so I'm kind of got my eyes on something that's more of a horror film, and so I'm writing it right now, and I'm trying to keep it sort of in that micro budget, low budget space. So that's kind of
Smart.
what I'm working on right now, and we'll see.
All right, man. Well, I feel like we've covered a lot tonight.
Yeah, we have, we did.
Uh, and it was a, great pleasure talking to you.
Yeah,
I feel
same.
like I feel like we talked about what we always talk about on the Indie Film Sucks podcast: the good, the bad, the in between of true independent filmmaking. Yeah, you can find Death Cipher where?
You can find it on Tubi, is the main place. So just go on Tubi, type in Death Cipher, and it'll be right there. And yeah.
And do you have any other websites you want to plug?
Yeah, deathcipher.com has a link to the film and all of the social media. And you can also find me at Real Wade Patterson on Instagram. So,
All right, fantastic. Well, on behalf of all the other Indie Film Sucks people who are not here tonight, I want to thank you for coming on.
yeah, thank you.
And
It was fun.
yeah, it's a good time. Have a good one.
You too.
Indie film sucks. Indie film sucks. It's the Indie Film Sucks